even the smartest of us start to degrade over time in their ability to think in completely
new concepts indeed. So
yeah.
you're kind of stuck in existing concepts. So why would we not find a way to use AI for our kids in school to learn critical thinking, to use all these tools? So basically Alpha Evolve can create its own algorithms for any type of intelligence that you would like it to have.
And a lot of people will say, well, that means that AI is bad for the environment, right? Because we use more energy. And this is why I wanted to touch on it on the newsletter. The thing is, humans always want more energy. The question is, what are we going to focus on using it for? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the InnoVision Network newsletter.
Number 31.
Oh, 31.
Number 31. Here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go.
You remember being 31, Patrick? No, you don't, do you?
That is a nice opening. I remember I knew nothing at that time. If I talk to people,
tell me about it, right?
Talk to people that are about 30 and then they start talking about, oh, this is the end of my life and stuff like that. And well, maybe I was like that as well.
I don't know who it was, but there's this thinker who said basically anything up to 40, you're just experimenting and learning. And then is when real life starts. And when I was 18, when I was 16, I thought I'd be a millionaire by 21. And then when I was 30, I thought it was starting to become a little bit grown up. And now when I look back at this, I feel like I knew nothing. I knew nothing. Nothing.
No, absolutely nothing. And the funny thing is, I always lived in this paradigm that when you are 18, 20, you are an adult, you're grown up, you're finished. And only to discover how far that is from the truth. And now I'm 50, right? And I still have these things that I thought, well, that you have a sense of, how do you call it? Nervousness in some situations that you would never would have figured that you would have that as an adult. But yeah, here we are.
Yeah, and now, while we're talking about this, I have to ask this. Wait, I'm wondering. Gemini, when did Mozart die? How old was Mozart when he died?
Mozart died in 1791 at the age of 35. Would you like to know more about Mozart's life or his cause of death?
Mozart dead at 35. This was a musical genius, and there's so many people like that. And yet, I mean, this is a common misconception, right? And I've touched on this before. A lot of people think that people didn't used to get very old, but the truth is that most people did get old if they survived their youth. So if they made it to 10 years old, their life expectancy would soar. And so that's why we talk about the past and we say, well, people only a life expectancy of 40. That's because, 8 out of 10 children died. Before 1900, 8 out of 10 children died, right? So it's not like people didn't get old, but man.
Well, and
anyway.
Mozart wasn't the only one who peaked young, right? If you look to all the big philosophers, their most influential work was usually written somewhere between 20 and 30 years old. So
that is true.
I missed that period completely in my life.
Why do you think that is?
That's a good question. Thinking out loud, I think it has to do with the fact that they are then most eager to discover life, thinking it through, not resting. That's my best guess now. What do you think?
Well, I've been thinking about this a lot because recently, I think a month ago, I read a big interview with Gerard van 't Hoofd, one of the biggest physicists of all time. But because he's of our time, he's not nearly as well known or remembered as, for example, Einstein. He's the guy that created the foundation for the idea that maybe we're all living in a black hole. He doesn't believe that himself. He thinks that quantum physics is way too mystified or made too mystical by modern day scientists. He believes in a deterministic universe. But anyway, he said that there need to be more scientists that are willing to do weird shit and try stuff that no one did and think outside of the box. And he said that when he was young, he could and would do that. But now as he gets older, he says it's harder for him to come up with these really strange ideas. And I think that is at the core of all of this. I think that although you get wiser as you grow older and you understand more of the world, it is that very understanding that starts limiting you in your ability to think beyond boundaries. And I think that you can kind of develop that and maintain that kind of youthfulness and that neuroplasticity if you really work on it. But for most people, that's just not something they consciously do. And therefore, even the smartest of us start to degrade over time in their ability to think in completely weird concepts.
New concepts, indeed. So
yeah.
you're kind of stuck in existing concepts and paradigms that you've created over the year, which is kind of limiting to think out of them.
Yeah.
And maybe also for earlier philosophers, there were not so many concepts around. We get confronted with so many different concepts as well, via social media, via news, everything, which is kind of also prohibiting to find a completely new concept. You're bombarded by existing concepts.
Yep.
We are in this day and age. Interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Talk about this for hours.
Yeah, we can talk about this for hours. Yeah, indeed. Hey, let's get started. Let's go through the past 2 weeks. Was there anything that just was interesting to you, or said, hey, what's that?
Well, there's been lots of interesting stuff.
Yeah,
Why don't you? I mean, you're always the first one to prepare our document, and you do it the best. So you wrote several things down. Let's. You want to start with one of those?
Well, one of the things that I noticed was we almost every week have news about OpenAI. This time we didn't, but there was one article that is squeezing in there because they released a manual basically, and I thought that was so strange, right? So you're sitting on the most intelligent AI ever. And of course you have all the models. I understand where it's coming, but it just feels weird that you have a manual that you provide to the end users. Use model 1.0, for instance, for this type of task, and then 4.5 for that type of task. Why is that a whole company that's not smart enough to just allow me to ask a question, and then you'll put the right model below it, right? Something like that. It just strikes me as weird.
Yeah, and I also don't understand why they're coming with this now, because Sam Altman promised us that we would be looking at the last 2 updates where this would be a thing at all. He literally promised us like 2 or 3 months ago, okay, we're going to do one more release, which was GPT 4.5, which has been released and almost nobody uses it for some reason. It's also interesting. And then he said, after that, we're going to release the next model that will be everything combined. Even though we got 0.4 mini and 0.4 mini high, and they're not everything combined, but he promised we were moving away from this, so I just don't get it.
Yeah, so have you heard anything? That was supposed to be GPT-5, right? That is coming out, but I haven't heard anything lately of that.
Yes. No. We haven't heard anything. So right now, what I'm looking forward to most is my access to Grok 3.5. I mean, it's been available for people on a Super Grok sub, but I can't figure out how to get one, or it's limited to US or whatever. Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if it is kind of hidden somewhere, ready to go, and they time it in such a way that if another big model like Grok 3.5 is being released, they immediately follow suit and then topple again, something like that. They've done that many times before.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What else?
You put this one down, but obviously I was already very intrigued in this one as well earlier. It's because I was reading about it yesterday. It's the super top secret experiment from the University of Zurich, which is taking so much flack right now. So basically, for those of you that don't know, there's this social media called Reddit, and it's never mentioned in the same sentence as Meta, Facebook, or Instagram. But Reddit is very left wing, but I have to say that. But it is super influential and massive social media where people have loads of discussions, right? And on Reddit, I mean, it's not 4chan. It's not like the dark web with everything that nobody wants to know about that humans even think about. But it does go rather deep on every topic you can imagine. And so apparently the University of Zurich ran a secret experiment on Reddit where it created AI agents, or AI chatbots, I should say, that would respond. And the only goal was to change people's minds. If they had a certain idea about something, to change their idea. And it was super successful because they would basically scrape all of your information from the internet. Then the one bot would basically build a profile of you, analyze who you are and what would work best in convincing you. And then the other bot would formulate the perfect responses to your posts, and it literally resulted into people completely changing their minds on topics. And I think it's super interesting. I think the University of Zurich did good that they did this, but now this university is getting flack because it's unethical. I say unethical. They literally proved that people are stupid. What's unethical about that? I mean, it's time we faced up to this.
Well, what is unethical about it is that they did this without people noticing. And there's the catch. Normally, if you do a psychological evaluation, you're bringing some people and then you do some interviews and you have an A group and a B group, and they know they are coming in for some kind of study. They don't know the objective. But these people never knew they were being manipulated by AI. And that is, of course, what people call unethical. But I agree with you. It's good that we have this report. So now we know how deep this really goes. Because you and I have been talking about this for so many times. We get all this fake news. Everybody knows it. But then you see this report and then again, you're flabbergasted by the depth of it, how easy it is to manipulate people. So I think it's good that we have this report and can have a conversation about it, right?
I agree. And not just that, I think that we have to be honest here. We know for a fact that on multiple layers, observation and knowledge can change the situation, right? If these people had known that an experiment was going on, they would have behaved differently, period.
Right.
Period.
Yes. True.
Right?
Yeah.
There's no way to get a real understanding of how people really operate in the wild and respond if you tell them up front that they're part of it. So I just think this is just so typical of our world today. Like this complete lack of understanding of the value. And then instead of focusing on the results and what that means for us as a society, they're attacking the university. Right?
Yeah.
I just don't get it.
So what do you think would be a solution to this going forward? Is it possible to watermark in some way that you are talking to an AI in the real life, or not when we do these type of tests, or will it never work?
Well, first of all, I think there will always be attempts at this. We already see this, right? Even right now, if you use ChatGPT, anything that comes out of it will be watermarked with invisible Unicode that you cannot see unless you use a specific website or tool to make it visible.
Right.
And if you straight out copy paste it somewhere else, somebody else can literally take that text and then can confirm if you used AI.
Yeah.
But there's already websites to filter it out. So it's this endless kind of back and forth, right? People trying to break the rules or trying to use AI in this case, and other people trying to figure it out. And I think ultimately it's an arms race that can never be won. And therefore, the only way to deal with it, in my opinion, is to get rid of it altogether, because it's the only way you can ever be sure of anything. If you try keeping to depend on apps and tools to find out if somebody's using AI, then you're always going to have the risk that you will not be able to distinguish it, and therefore you might be acting on something that you think is real, but is not. If you simply make the assumption and you change the kind of mindset to say, well, we're always going to include this, we're just going to make sure that it's always the case, then you never have to worry about being afraid that it's in there, because that's your base assumption and that's what you work with. And so then you change your way of dealing with information. And the truth is that that's what we've done for the entire history of humanity, right? As long as humans have been around, we've been talking to other people and we've been making the assumptions that maybe they're not telling us the truth. And the level of that degree, it depends on the person we're speaking to and how well we know them.
Yeah.
So the solution is there.
The scale of it now is frightening to most people and me.
Of course. Yeah. And it should be.
Yeah.
It should be.
Yeah.
But the solution is not to start prohibiting things or to pretend it's not there. And we'll touch on this later in our today's episode when we get to AI and education, because you know, that's another thing where this is a big.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's park it for a minute and get back to it in a second. There was another thing that you noted, and it was Google released another model called Alpha Evolve.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was remarkable about it?
Yeah, so the Alpha series is from Google DeepMind, and it's under the straight direction of Demis Hassabis. I also show him in my keynote, and he actually, for the record, I don't know if many people know this, but Demis Hassabis and Mustafa Suleyman used to be or are very good friends. Yeah. And they started the company called DeepMind, which was then acquired by Google. And Demis stayed on. Mustafa left Google, then went on to found a new AI company called Inflection. And then ultimately, I think he left that company. And he left it. And then he got hired by Microsoft. So now Demis is head of Google DeepMind, which is basically the most important AI division at Google, and then Mustafa is head of AI at Microsoft, which is the most important. So this is really relevant to understand, because there's two people that are good friends that have worked together for years that are in control of the potentially two most important outside of OpenAI and Anthropic, development organizations in AI.
Yes.
Now, what's the difference? Because we have AlphaFold, and for those that saw my keynote and that have seen yours, they will be familiar with Alpha Zero, and AlphaGo, of course, which were the models that were used to play chess and play Go.
Yeah.
Now, these were traditional machine learning algorithms, and now we would call them algorithms. We wouldn't even call them AI anymore. That's, how our perception of AI has changed. But basically what they do is they just do hundreds, thousands, millions, trillions of combinations, and they try to figure out what works and what doesn't, and then they learn from that. So basic algorithm machine learning. AlphaFold was specifically built for protein structures, right? So AlphaFold basically did what AlphaGo and AlphaZero did for chess and Go, but just did that for protein folding. AlphaEvolve is the first time that basically their approach that they used in the past has been combined with a large language model. So this is relevant. And I can't say 100% certain, but I would assume that means that it's got top of the line transformer technology integrated there. And so what it does, it's an evolutionary machine learning. So it's not just iteration on iteration and doing that billions of times, but it really has kind of it's able to focus in, right? Because the transformer model and large language models that we use now, they were capable of getting kind of an understanding, okay, wait, this is a relevant piece of information here, and we need to focus in on that, and we need to see what the relationship with other things is. So if you simplify it, I guess you should say that it's the first time that they upgraded their traditional machine learning AI algorithms with large language model transformer technology, and have taken it to the next level. Right. And they can roll this out across multiple domains. And that last thing is also important because AlphaZero was specifically designed for chess. AlphaGo was specifically designed for Go. AlphaFold was specifically designed for protein folding. But AlphaEvolve is basically a general purpose algorithmic discovery intelligence.
Yeah, and even if you give this clear description of it, maybe it doesn't even come across how powerful that is. So basically AlphaEvolve can create its own algorithms for any type of intelligence that you would like it to have, any game that it can play on a amazingly high IQ level, because what is Gemini already? It was also above 130, something like that. So we can expect more AlphaFolds and all these kind of different types of alpha.
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. So for my keynote, I made a completely new list with the IQ rankings.
There's also the agency, or autonomously, how do you say it in English? The way that the system is autonomously is increasing as well with that system.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't need to explain this, but this is the IQ bell curve. Now, 70% of us fall in the middle part, which is between 85 and 115. What I didn't know, and I recently discovered this, I always thought that 100 was the average for the global population, but it's not. Actually, the average is 89. So that the 100 is the average of modern Western countries with a high level of education, right? So 89 is the average for the global population. Now, if we turn this on its side, and here is a development path of AIs in IQ level over between November 2022 and 2024. And all the way at the bottom is also a random guesser. So if a human would just do the test and random guess, that's a score they would get. And so GPT 3.5 had the same score as a random guesser, basically. And O3 with unlimited thinking scored 180 plus. Now, nobody has access to O3 unlimited thinking anymore because they spent $250,000 just on doing one test to get the IQ. An average OpenAI O3 access, which we have through deep research and with Plus and Pro, scores somewhere in the area of 136. And Gemini 2.5 Ultra is over here and scored on the upper range 120, 125, I think it was.
Yeah, what an impressive graph, the way that you also presented. Very cool. I like it.
Yeah, for anybody who would like to see more of those, 11th of June. AI masterclass. But we'll get to that at the end of the newsletter.
So let's talk about something interesting and fun as well, because we've got a new branding after 2 years of Innovation Network, and we just received it on Friday. So we played a little bit with it over the weekend. Let's just look at it together and see what we think and what we can talk about it a little bit.
2 years of suffering through Aragorn's super mediocre, if not completely low skill design qualities and cyberpunk game children colors.
Yeah, so
for those of our clients who are listening, we know you didn't like it. That's why we fixed it.
Yeah, indeed. So the number one question about our branding was indeed, so why is everything so cyberpunk, dystopian? Well, we talk a lot about the future, but it's not dystopian in our point of view, right? We're just positive people about it. So we took it at heart, but we also bootstrapping this whole innovation network. So, but in our team, we have Jeroen Peerbold, who is the owner of Stijlbreuk. Good friend, great company, and he suggested, can we do something about the branding? And one of his employees, Marissa, took it on. And I hope you like what we have to show you here. So first of all, it was supposed to make be a design that shows the waves of change that we talk about. What very important also was that we changed it to a little bit more corporate styling, because we do business with a lot of larger organizations as well. And the fact that we kind of digest a lot of information towards a larger audience. So here we go. Drum roll.
That's not really good.
So as you can tell, we're very happy with it.
Yeah, we're very happy with it.
Indeed. So Innovation Network, established in 2046. That's a weird date, Aragorn.
I thought I'd give us some applause for this.
That is maybe the second most, the question I get the most. So why are you established in 2046? What's that about?
Really?
Most people ask it. Yeah, because they notice it. Normally, this is established 1800, something like that, on a beer bottle. Yeah. But we are the only company that is established in the future. Yeah, we are actually from the future, aren't we?
We're time travelers. But this was your idea. I loved it, man. And I still love it. It's so good. Well, I don't get that question quite as often, but I think that a lot of that has to do with that. Whenever I talk to people about the Innovation Network, it's almost 9 out of 10 times after my keynote, in which I talk about the singularity in 2045. So I guess then it makes sense to people whenever they see it. Yeah.
I looked it up for the new logo. If Ray had changed that prediction, it changes a little bit to 45 to 49. We sticked with 246. Okay. Well, so we kept it like that. And then we, of course, do different types of stuff, like we do dinners, we do events, so that all fits. But what I also like is this app logo, where it really comes strongly across with our new colors, a little bit of purple and a little bit of green, in a different way than the purple and green that we had. So
and a nice thing, of course, here to mention for those of you that didn't already know. First of all, when we first got together, one of the first books that both of us read was called The Coming Wave by Mustafa Suleyman, who I mentioned before, head of Microsoft's AI division and founder of Google DeepMind. And both
and
of us
still one of the best books you can read about
still
AI.
One of the best, absolutely. And then there's that, and then we called it Innovation Network, and then your book is going to be called Waves of Abundance. Then when we gave basically ChatGPT the assignment about two months ago, I think now, or 3 months ago, when the new image model was released, we gave it the assignment to make a complete kind of analysis of our brand, what we do, what we stand for, what is our mission, what are our values, and then make a design out of that. And the community will remember that we got something really cool out of that, right? Because ChatGPT came up with a logo which was a wave with an underlying very network kind of structure, and it was super cool. Initially, I think at least me, but I think you two really thought, this is something we're gonna be working with. We even used it in some of the thumbnails and stuff like that. But then we decided to really go still for the human touch on this one, the professional touch, because AI just is close but not completely there when it comes to also doing this and then making it all consistent and giving you a document and your Canva and your PowerPoint, and obviously our website is going to follow now. And then I actually didn't think we were going to change the logo. Right? So I went into it thinking we wouldn't. And then Marissa and Jeroen came back, and Aaron worked on this as well. And they showed us this logo. And initially I didn't like it at all. I mean, this is just me. But then after 2 days, I was like, whoa, this logo is so awesome. It's so good. It's so cool, so creative. And it managed to capture everything, right?
The waves and the microphone is in there, indeed.
The waves,
and you're stating something interesting, right? So we threw so much AI at it in creating the colors, in creating the logo, in completing the redesigning websites. We've tried so many things, and ultimately it took a human to take all these things in and then come with something like that. But on a relatively short notice with limited resources, because these projects for large companies can range up to millions to get something done with a large agency. And here you see the effect that if you think it through and work closely with a human that knows what he or she is doing, you can get something cool as well. Just wanted to just quickly show this is a setup of our new website that we'll promise to work on from now on. So we have something nice to share in a couple of weeks or months. So, but this is probably in the direction of how it's going to look.
Yeah, looks awesome. So what I wanted to tie it into is we had this set up and we kind of went over it, but there's this guy called Stephen Klein. And
you show me his post.
I'll share it and then I'll read it. Because I don't want it to just be about his post. I want it to be about this general sentiment, right? This is Stephen Klein. And, he's a CEO of an AI company, Curiouser. I'm a Berkeley instructor, Harvard MBA. Look, I don't know. Anybody can put anything in their LinkedIn subtitles these days, but I trust that he's being honest. And he says, agentic AI is 100% nonsense designed to scare you into spending money in consulting. And that really covers his post. He goes into it. He presents some sources and some papers. Agentic AI is pure hype. And the most important thing he does is he calls it a stochastic parrot somewhere. The point that I want to make here, and coming back to our experience with trying to use AI for our own work, is that, yes, we weren't able to have AI do the whole thing. Yes, we eventually went to human to tie it all together. But if we look at what came out of it initially, that already put us light years ahead, right? Because let's look at the final result. We had a wave in there, which, we had some kind of the network thing in there. We even were already going towards the right color range and the gradients. So it's not like it was useless, right? The point was that we're just not at that point where AI can tie it all together and finish it up. But if you consider what we did now and what we could do 2 years ago, and this is something I mentioned in my keynote, in 2021, I worked for Yom and I did a whole trajectory for $40,000 to design the logo and the business style. Yeah. And yes, and we had 3 or 4 sessions with that team, and they worked on it for months, right? Months. And what we got out of it was, it was marginally better than what we did for Innovation Network now for a fraction of the cost. But if you consider then that AI did something that came already to 80%, all right? So let's say 75%, and it did it basically for the price of a monthly €20 subscription. That's what you should be focusing on. And the idea that this is all just a hype, it's just a matter of people moving goalposts and not understanding the trajectory we're on.
Yeah,
right? Just like the IQ.
And the statement of that person, Stephen Klein, that you just showed, is making a remark that agentic AI is not real. Maybe he kind of messes up his own definition of what agentic AI is. That could be the case there. But we just chose to do it with a human. But if we would use Manus or any other available agent to say, okay, make us a deck, make us a website, make us the whole branding, tell us what our voice should be, how our picture should look, you'll get that. So it is already here. It's just a matter of to what quality level is it? Is it sufficient for your purpose or not? I think that's a weird statement that he makes there.
Yeah, it is a weird statement. But again, I think what it really comes down to is that people are judging everything by their standard of what they want and then what is capable today. And they're completely forgetting that we're on a trajectory, right? What we have today is not what we'll have in 8 months. This is, by the way, another slide from my keynote. And on the right side, the QR code will take you to a website I created with Manus, which is agentic AI, completely to provide people with background information on my keynote and extra data. And it's not perfect. It's not perfect, but this was created in 20 minutes, asking an AI to do it and create the website, find the data, all of that, right? Yeah. And Grant Lee, on the left here, is the founder and CEO of startup Gamma. And he recently said, and that's what this picture is about, he said, look, if I was doing this business 10 years ago, I'd be hiring at least 200 people at this point. And currently our team is 28 people. He says, basically, we have 28 people doing the work of what used to be 200 people a decade ago. And I think that this is the kind of thing we should be focusing on, right? That is the signal, and that is the trajectory we should be taking serious. And then for people to come in like Stephen Klein and say, well, it's all just a hype, it's just either he hasn't used it at all or he just doesn't understand that we're not living in a static time and place with this technology.
No, it's not. It's not a hype. It's not overhyped. It's underhyped. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's what Eric Schmidt said, the CEO, a former CEO of Google.
He's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So, what else do you have?
Well, because
see
I love
something-
Mr.
I see something about AI and energy that you haven't touched upon. I always find it very interesting because that's also a public opinion about, well, AI is using too much energy, it's bad for the world, and all these kind of things. And I know you have some interesting statements about that. So
I absolutely do. So, yeah, what you see here is Michael Jackson is a venture capitalist I follow. Super interesting guy. Just like me, you get banned a few times from LinkedIn, so that makes you extra interesting to me. Apparently, he's willing to say things that nobody wants to hear. And he posted about the International Energy Agency's latest report on energy and AI. And basically he said that as things are currently going, electricity demand for data centers worldwide is set to double by 2030, right? That's energy demand is going to double. I recommend everybody to check the report out.
it's an extensive report. Let's link it in the...
So, and a lot of people will say, well, that means that AI is bad for the environment, right? Because we use more energy. And this is why I wanted to touch on it on the newsletter. I totally understand that is a very easy, simple deduction to make, right? Okay, AI uses energy needs to be created, that's better for the environment, and that's the end of it. But Parkinson's law, for those of you that don't know, states, and this is not about energy, Parkinson's law is one that Elon Musk uses a lot, and it says basically any amount of time that you assign will be used. So in other words, if you have a project and you say it's going to take 2 months, people will take 2 months. But if you say for the same project, we do it in a week, it will be done in a week. And I would argue that the same kind of universality law can be applied to energy. The thing is, humans always want more energy. The question is, what are we going to focus on using it for? There's no scenario, unless we have a solar, wind, or something like that knocks out all the electricity on Earth. There's no scenario in which we do not keep growing our energy demand. And that's not a bad thing either. Because again, you could say, well, if you need more energy, we're going to get more coal and more oil and we're going to burn it and it's bad. But on the other side is that we see that the current transition, sustainability transition, is going faster than ever before. It's on an exponential curve. I can show you lots of graphs about that too. I didn't queue them up, but that's also happening. And the reason it's happening is because the market, and I'm not a fan of capitalism, but in this case, there's these patterns are recurring. The market is creating this demand. Yes, the market is creating demand. And China said, we're going to go completely sustainable. There's whole mountains covered in solar panels in China already. Basically, China is going to be the first, not the first, because I think the UK is already 100% sustainable energy. They closed their last coal power plant. They might still be buying something from abroad that's not 100%, but Australia is on a great trajectory. China is the third and one of the biggest countries in the world. And they're going to be completely sustainable in no time. And the reason that is happening is because we have a demand for energy and we have a demand for sustainability. If we would take those away, this wouldn't have happened, right? That's the thing. If we had kept developing nuclear power in the 70s, we would have nuclear power plants everywhere now that would be 100 times safer and better than what we have today. And we would have no climate change problems.
So in that, can you open that LinkedIn report again, of that post again from Michael Jackson? He states something about the amount of terawatts. I just looked it up, how much solar panels you would need for that. But I forgot the number that he says there.
945.
Yeah, so it's going to double towards that, 945 terawatt. That will be the surface of 2 times London, covered in solar panels of today's technology to provide that on a global base.
Yes.
Well, it's not nothing, right? But if you say that the Chinese are already covering entire mountains and we have continents that have place for that, that is very doable for humans to create, right? So
it is. I mean, just look, I don't have the latest and greatest.
And that's just solar. We're not even talking about nuclear, or we're not even talking about other advancements that we can make.
Yeah, look, this is an old slide from my keynote. I'm not using it actively, and I don't have the latest and greatest right now. But what it says here is it took the world 68 years to reach 1 terawatt, right? And then in the last 2 years, we just doubled it. This is the curve of solar power development, right? Over the last 10 years, we've made solar cells 1 million times more efficient, right? And now we're coming up with all these other new ways. China's fossil fuel power output may fall in 2025 for the first time in a decade. Well, this was from January, and I can tell you it's already confirmed. It has fallen, right? So, but these things only happen when there is a demand, when there is a drive. And so when we talk about energy uses for AI, 2 things need to be realized. One, the energy usage that we're talking about is not for individual usage. This is a big mistake a lot of people make. It's not about your ChatGPT queries, right? Those don't matter. You can ask 50,000 ChatGPT queries and you'll still have a smaller impact on the environment than using one plastic bag, right? Or one hamburger in terms of water, or CO2. Where is it? Yeah, this is asking ChatGPT question. This is a 10-minute video on YouTube, right? And this is one hamburger in terms of water. This is 300 ChatGPT queries, right? And I can keep going. This is, by the way, a blog by Andy Masley, but this is about personal usage. The real energy is not personal usage. It's from training the models. And again, there people say, well, it's going to cost a lot of energy, but the same thing is going on there. Because the need and the demand is so big, we see around the world all these innovations to bring efficiency up, right? To create new models that need less energy. But all of these things only happen when there's that demand, right? As soon as we take away the demand, we will be stuck with old, outdated models that will always cost a shit ton of energy. And what we're going to do is we're still going to use that energy. We're just going to use it for Temu or Amazon to order stuff that we don't need or that we don't want, because we're going to use it anyway. So why don't we want to use it for something that's going to be good for humanity? That's my point. That's what I just want to repeat for people to get that.
Yeah. So talking about things that are good for humanity, maybe a good pivot to talk about education.
Yeah, cool. So again, my favorite man, Mr. Stephen Klein. Teaching kids with generative AI is educational malpractice. So what he argues is that we should stop using AI in education because we first need to figure it out. I will argue the exact opposite. No surprise. What was the number one mistake we made when it came to social media? What's the number one mistake?
You're asking me right now?
I'm asking the audience. I'm asking you.
I'm drawing a blank here. I don't know where you want to go with that. What?
No, that's okay. Well, the number one mistake is that we never did anything with it in education, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah, I agree.
We didn't.
Yeah.
We never even considered it. We didn't just postpone it. We just didn't.
We also didn't know what it was.
We didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And so we didn't start teaching our kids what to do with it, right? And how to react to it. So now,
so Stephen would probably argue, so let's make sure that we understand what AI is before we teach our children.
Yes, but how long will that take?
Yeah, there's no end to it. So
exactly.
Yeah,
there's no end to it. No. Not only that, we know for a fact that our current institutions, our government, and our other institutions are not capable of doing it fast enough. They will not be able to do it faster than AI is developing. Yes. So the choice is not to postpone it until we understand it. The choice is to postpone it inevitably. And what will happen? We will have a whole new generation of children that have no understanding, right? We just need to go with it, trust the process, and figure it out as we go. There's no other option. Not just that, there are many reasons and already proof signals that things are going really well, that we should not be so worried.
Yeah, so I have an example here that I looked up. This is an interesting case. There's a school in Brownsville in the US, and they have a complete AI-powered education model. So basically the model is that they only do 2 hours a day of providing the kids a AI-tutored education. And this reminds me of my own kids. My own kids have what we call in the Netherlands a Jena plan. The Jena plan means they go to school for about 6 or 7 or 8 hours on a day, but the effective learning on the day itself is only an hour or maybe 90 minutes that they really sit down and go to specific material. The rest is playtime. This school does the same thing. So they replaced the teachers. They do only 90 minutes or maximum 2 hours of these of really going through math, trying a little bit with critical thinking, and the teachers are there to help them, to coach them through the process. And here's the thing. They measured that these students are now in the top 1% of nationwide.
Exactly. The top 1% of the nationwide is what you said, right?
Yeah,
exactly. See, so this is, here we go again. Like, I'll show you, this is, first of all, I love this example. And power to America, because their educational system has been really bad. So super smart. But this is one signal that it's going well. I'll show you another signal that it's going well, right? Here, I got this thing that I mentioned in my keynote, and I will be adding the Texas school to it. This is Nigeria, right? In Nigeria, they did another example.
Yeah.
This is from January. Right? In the modest classroom in Edo State, Nigeria, an educational revolution unfolded. What they did is they used G to create customized tutors for the students, and they achieved in 6 weeks the same learning that previously they did in 2 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we can look up all these examples, but if you just look at your own usage of AI, every adult, and you see what you get out of that, so why would we not find a way to use AI for our kids in school to understand what it is, to understand how it works, to learn critical thinking, to use all these tools, to get better in what we had at the beginning, training your bullshit detector basically on everything. It's not a matter of should we do this, but how is the best way forward in doing that? That is what we need to do, of course.
Exactly. So before our newsletter recording, I went to look at the article and I asked it to summarize it so it would be easier for me to have this conversation with you. And then I was thinking, okay, but what are the current biggest problems in education right now in the West? And I literally asked ChatGPT, right? Give it to me a 5 bullet point list. What are the biggest problems? I wasn't surprised to read this at all, but it's nice to have it confirmed. Widespread teacher shortage and burnouts.
Well,
right.
No, let's start there, right? So if they would have an AI support taking over, that would really solve the shortage, make it maybe more fun as well for the burnout, have a change of way of working as well. So that is easy solved with AI.
Exactly. Lingering COVID, learning loss, and widening achievement gaps is currently a problem. Well, what did we just see? Using AI as a tutor allows students to learn much faster. What does that help us do? Get back in the game, cover the gap, catch up, right?
Oh, and the next one, I already see it there. Digital divide and
education.
If there's one thing that AI does is reducing that inequality. Everyone in the world has now access to all Wikipedia, all human knowledge. It's all gonna be shared. So this is taking away that educational inequality. So that is the number one reason to do it. So everybody has the same, easier access to the same base level of understanding for making your votes count during elections, making your decision where you go, forming your communities. There you have it. This is for me one of the most important ones.
And let's tie that one back to energy and data centers, right? Because where are these AIs ran? In data centers, right? So do we need those to put the educational level of the world up? Yes. And who are benefiting from this? Kids in Nigeria that used to not have access to great education. Because why? They all have access to smartphones. But those smartphones don't need to be really powerful. They can be cheap ones. Because where is the AI run? In the cloud. Where? In the data center, right? You see where this is going? Like, it's the level of short-sightedness of these people is just beyond me. Student mental health crisis is another one. What have we seen already? Mental health is improved. In South Korea, they're running experiments with yodels, which are AI robots talking to elderly people, which is proven to improve their mental health. We've seen already lots of surveys, but also some real papers on research that has shown that people that talk to ChatGPT on a daily basis that were suffering from mental health, that they see improvement. Right.
Right. But let's linger on this a little bit further. I do agree, and you apply very positive thinking in the positive cases, what could work. But I think this is also the thing where we should spend most of our attention on doing it the right way, right? I know you're an advocate of, okay, give kids a mobile phone, let them try out social media. But the downside is if they don't know where to do and you're not monitoring them, if you're not actively helping them, they can end up on weird websites, weird things, and which could be not so good for their health, mental health. Right?
Look, but this is the thing. I'm totally with you. I totally agree. I'm not saying give children a smartphone and then just, whatever. I'm not saying take them, throw them in the deepest end of the pool without teaching them how to swim. The problem is not that I want that. The problem is that we're living in a world where parents increasingly and teachers increasingly do not understand the digital world that their children live in. And their response is the knee-jerk reaction of, okay, then we're just going to prohibit them access.
Exactly.
That is not the solution if you know that their life is going to be increasingly digitized in the future, right? You need to learn them the skills. So instead of banning your children from AI, banning them from social media, how about you go and take some responsibility and develop those skills and actually try it out?
That is just perfectly stated, Aragorn. I totally agree with that. And that is what we need to do and help the teachers understand it. And how do you teach the kids to work with AI? And it's okay to fail then. Try things out and experiment and learn from it and grow with it. But saying no is a path to absolute destruction.
Yeah, and it just goes nowhere. Yeah. Finally, and then we'll have to move on to the next topic, but higher education affordability and student debt explosion. I mean, look, this is another one. Why is it so expensive to teach students? Why is the affordability so complicated? Because it costs a lot of money. So why are we saying no to something that could significantly reduce cost and therefore make access to good education universal without having to get into debt?
Right. Yeah. This is already. I think this is already an old-fashioned statement.
Yeah. Cool.
So great. I can talk about this all day. This is so close to heart. Yeah. But let's move on. Time for some robotics?
Time for some robotics.
So we've talked many times about how cheap these robots are getting and how easy is last newsletter we had this remote control hand that you can print yourself. And now this appeared on my timeline. For an amount below $5,000, you get an entire set that you can print at home. For those people who would like to print their own humanoid robot, there you are. And I just want to emphasize just the pricing of these kind of things. Of course, this is not perfect, but if you want to educate yourself or a classroom about what you can do with robotics, how it all works, it's very affordable with a very cool design.
Yeah, and this one is still controlled with old Vive controllers, I see.
Yep.
But I mean, soon you'll just be able to put an AI in that, right, as well, from your smartphone, from the cloud, whatever. These smaller models, it's going to go really quickly, and it just shows. I mean, there was something else I wanted to touch on, and there's a video that we'll provide in the newsletter. I won't do it right here, but Optimum, which is one of my favorite content creators, he did a whole video on it, and it's called "My New 3D Printer is Insane," and he talks about how he bought, and yes, it's still $10,000 the machine itself. Right, that's not cheap, but he talks about what it can do and how amazing it is. And this is another development that so many people are glossing over or not aware of. The absolute crazy rise of 3D printing technology. I think that if we really want to move to a more sustainable world, then what we really need to have, and what I wouldn't be surprised if we get, is that there's a 3D printer in every home, just like there's a microwave in every home right now. And so what people will do in the future is they'll 3D print whatever they want and need. And if they no longer want to use something or it's broken, we will transition to something where the material can be recycled, right? So the printer filament, which now you still have to buy the rolls, but maybe you recycle it at home, or maybe you basically just send all of your printer filament back with the garbage, and it gets recycled, and you get it anew. It's 100% recyclable, and it should be, and then you can just print whatever you need, right? So what you'll be paying for, if we still do that at all, it's but you'd be paying for the blueprint. Right? And you don't need to get it shipped from IKEA or whatever, and you can just print it at home. And think about the massive savings in terms of energy, in terms of resources that would create for the world. And this is why I think 3D printing is really the future. And combined with AI, and this allows us to go a segue into the next topic, because wouldn't it be cool if you had a really cool way to use that technology and then create the stuff that you want?
Yeah. So it was a long time ago when we showed a video from a guy who had his own personal office, right? And he now have shared all the goodies in an online video. So if you like what you see here, then you can basically learn from a 50-minute video and with all kind of other explanations on how to create this at home. But this guy has created a holomat, which he has completely integrated with OpenAI. He can talk to it, and I can design on that mat. Here, for instance, he just writes out some kind of bat, and he has a laser cutter adjusted to that. And he's making all kinds of cool tools. He literally has, and he has also in the next door all kind of 3D printers. So he makes his 3D model in here, and then has a 3D printed version of it. It's just so cool that something that we see from the Iron Man movies is just available. If you want to do it.
Exactly, and yeah. And this is the future, man. I have friends who already don't have it this cool yet, but I have multiple friends who have 3D printers, right? My friend Bram just tried to sell his old 3D printer to us in our LAN party app. This is not hard. Right? This is another thing. This is decentralized technology, and I spoke about this before. We are definitely moving into a decentralization of technology, and that will lead to decentralization of human. How do you say this? When everybody comes together. Like now, we're all living in cities. Converging. Yeah. I don't know. That's not the word I was looking for. But humans all come together. Why do we live in cities? Because we need the infrastructure. right? And we don't have the infrastructure everywhere. We only have it in cities. We have plumbing, we have electricity, we have internet. And a lot of these things have increasingly become more available out in the open, but there's always been limitations. But now we have a massive decentralization shift in technologies, right? We have Starlink, so we can get internet anywhere for $200 a month, right? Anywhere, on the top of a mountain, in the middle of the desert, doesn't matter. We have Tesla solar panels with a power pack, right? So you can have, and here's one brand, but there's multiple. You can basically get electricity anywhere, right? Anywhere. We have technology now that allows you to desalinize water anywhere, really. It's not massively rolled out yet, but it's available, right? And it's super cheap. Yeah. So basically every kind of technology you can probably think of that used to be limited to cities is now being created in very cheap ways. And as it's being rolled out, the deflationary power of technology makes it cheaper and cheaper so that you're no longer dependent on that. And that is a great thing because it means we will, in the future, when we have AI and virtual reality and augmented reality, we can do anything from anywhere. And that means as humanity, we can spread out again across the globe. And that means we do not have to come together in cities because cities are a cesspool of waste and pollution and all of that.
I like your argument. If you would make a new graph, maybe here's an idea on how much square meters a world citizen occupies. Or let me put it different, how many people are living on a square kilometer together, right? Today and in the end of the century. How much less people would then live on a square kilometer according to that theory you just laid out? The technology is there. I am skeptic. There's a cultural thing on people herdling together as well, which you didn't mention, and I haven't thought it through. But there are other reasons as well for people to live in cities closer to each other. Let's see how that plays out. And also the metaverse. That means that people don't need a natural space, but might be living in some kind of matrix kind of reality, and could be as a matter of fact be closer on each other. Actually,
I got, and this is no secret, I was super depressed in COVID. Right, my previous business basically went bankrupt. I just barely didn't, but I was stuck with the debt afterwards. And it destroyed my life in many ways because from one day to the next, I wasn't allowed to go outside. And I always thought I would be one of those people who could be in his home alone for years without having any issues. But it turned out I wasn't, right? You know what saved me? What absolutely saved me was being on Discord every day with my friends Pim and Niels. And I played World of Warcraft with them, right? I was living in the digital world as a night elf or as a tauren, whatever. I'm a troll. I play both sides, both factions. But it was there. And I had stuff to do, and I had social interactions every day with them and with a lot of other people that I played with. And if it hadn't been for that, I don't know if I wouldn't have lost my mind, right? Because I wasn't allowed to go outside. I couldn't see anybody. This is what saved me. So that idea that we need to come together, in my experience, is something that in the near future will really, it's already for some people, but for everyone, we'll get to a point where we have so many of our social engagements by simply wearing a pair of glasses like the one that Google just launched that will allow us to see the person we're speaking to standing right next to us as if they were right there, and they can be on the other side of the planet. And I think that is something that we're really underestimating, how fast that is coming and how impactful that will be for us. And it can really be such a positive force in the world if we spread out again and we reduce our carbon footprint and we no longer demand a central electricity network that's always has to be able to provide at max capacity, but it's more tailored to ourselves, which means we have less waste. I can go on and on and on about this, and I really think there's so much potential for positive change there. But people are looking at all these short-term kind of negative potentials that are in the way.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll touch upon this topic in more newsletters to come.
You think so?
I think so. That's you got my mind thinking indeed about how fast that will play out. But let's park it for now. Let's do some quickies. There was an event from Netflix, and it's called Upfront 2025, and they announced that in 2026, which is pretty soon, we will get ads again, but the ads will be AI generated and supposed to be more in the flow, in the moment of what you are looking at that point in time. So I don't know if you're watching a zombie movie, what then the commercial is going to look like, but I think they're heading in that direction.
Yeah. Well, obviously I'm not surprised, but I'm super, and I've said this in my keynote many times, I'm super curious to know what they're doing behind the scenes that they're not showing us, right? because there's a lot of stuff going on at Netflix that people don't pay attention to. And I wasn't even mentioned here either. But if you go to your own Netflix app, you'll notice that if you've paid attention, that about 2 years ago, you started seeing games.
Yeah.
Right? There's games on Netflix. I
Yeah.
haven't played them, but there's games on Netflix. And so
That's a very big growth opportunity for them.
it is a massive growth opportunity, but it also very much signifies that they are aware that content and entertainment are not these two divided pillars anymore. It used to be like gaming. Nobody really took it serious. It was small. And then it started to massively grow. But Hollywood did almost nothing with it. But now Netflix they're bridging the gap. And I think that the same is happening with AI behind the scenes. I've said this before. I think that in 5-6 years, you'll be able to basically generate any series on Netflix on the fly. And they'll probably come up with some kind of framework where if you generate it through the Netflix AI, which is probably specially trained for it, they retain some kind of rights on it rather than you. And then their monetization model will be tailored towards that. But basically, you can ask Netflix to generate you any series, like, do me a modern version of The Friends with double the Joey and add in Samantha from Sex and the City.
Well,
Example I always give.
And I actually was expecting a little bit more into that direction. So where is the next Bandersnatch, or a step in between, or your Squid Game with multiple endings that are AI generated, or I don't know, some interesting killings that are AI generated, and then instead they focus on the ads to do it there. Maybe they're experimenting it on that way. So or they're keeping their cards closer to the chest, like you say. Probably is that until it's perfect. It needs to be perfect.
Well, maybe not perfect. But I definitely think that has to do with it, that they're definitely looking into this, right? They're spending money on this. If they are not, then they are missing the greatest opportunity of their time. And you could say, well, Netflix is at that point, right? Because they basically destroyed Blockbuster a decade and a half ago, or a decade and a half ago. So maybe now they're too big, too corporate. But I don't think that. I don't feel that. I think Netflix is still pretty good in that sense, because a lot of these companies have actually learned from happened after the .com bubble and the app explosion and the internet explosion.
And you can tell from hearing about the culture how they're internally organized, right? So I had a conversation with a person who worked at Netflix, who is now working for ServiceNow, which is one of our clients, of course. Yep. So you got an insight. And I checked something that I read a book about, is that they do an interesting 360 with managers. What they do is a brutally honest 360 review for the top management layers. And I think this is very good. So basically the sitting down at a dinner, and then everybody goes around and gives you brutally direct feedback on how you've behaved and how you can improve. And it's these type of things that people cannot hide behind a silo or in hierarchy. This is really helpful. I understand that it is brutal for the people who participate, but they all say they learn from it. And that person also confirmed that it is indeed happening within the company. And those type of things is what you need as a company to go forward in these times, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Hey, let's wrap up with two cool things that are happening. I know that we have a new workshop coming up. And on the 11th of June, we're doing a theater show. So that will be your first theater show for a large audience. Pitch what you're going to do, buddy.
Well, is it my
Tell
first?
what you're going to do.
It's not my first. I mean, look, my innovation network and my keynotes are my life right now, right? But what I really wanted, and for those of you that don't know, I have multiple keynotes that are already on YouTube. One of them last year scored 128,000 views. The last one that I posted a week or two ago has made it to around 6,000 now, which is a lot less, but still very happy about that. And it was just a random recording at a Baker McKenzie event, the Global Tech Summit, where I spoke. And I really wanted to have a professional recording. And because now all of my keynotes are B2B, right? And just like at dinners, I talk to companies. I really wanted to bring my message to, consumers, normal Janes and Joes, because this is about their life, right? I want to inspire the world with the potential positive outcomes. I want to make them awake and aware of what's coming, not woke, awake. So I really wanted to do that. And the best way to do that, I thought, was to do a theater show. So a tour, right? Where I go through, 10, 20, 50 theaters in the Netherlands, and I do a night and people can buy tickets and come and see it. But it needs to be fun, right? Not any keynote can go into a theater, right? I would argue most keynotes don't fit in a theater.
Is there a lot you need to tweak for for what you just said, make it a little bit more fun, maybe less serious, and a little bit different audience than B2B? Is there a lot of tweaking on your mind at the moment?
I have been tweaking, but I've been tweaking in my keynotes.
Yeah, you always tweak.
Yeah, I always tweak, but I'm definitely bringing more humor in, more fun. I've always tried to focus on that, and I want it to be an experience, so people really leave it with a sense of having gone to a super cool kind of lecture rather than a keynote. I've even started using the word lecture more often, and but on the 11th. It will be up to an hour and a half max. I'm aiming for an hour and 15 minutes, which is the length of the best keynotes that I've given over the last year. And then a Q&A, 15 minutes. And I'm going to cover everything. And I'm really building an amazing deck with amazing experiences. I got a new visualization intro thing. Well, mostly the music is a little different than what I've used before. I'm making it very interactive. I'm going to show some real life interactions with agents. It's just going to be really cool. And and then of course after that, people need to make the change from seeing what's happening to what does that mean for me, and that's where you come in, right?
Yeah, exactly. So what I then plan to do is something that really works well on our meetups, because if you load people with the content that you typically have in your keynote, people have a lot of questions to ask, but some are introverts, and it helps to put them on a smaller table and have conversation about it. And there's always an expert at the table who has locally downloaded a large language model and can tell anything about it, and somebody who doesn't understand what it is. And combining these people together is a strong feat. So what I'm aiming to do is stimulate those conversations and let people think about, how can I apply this? Even if you walk away doing it at your home with your own family, hey, that's a big win. And if you can do it in your company, that's even bigger. Or maybe you can help in education like we just talked. And so we're going to do that part. And after that, there's even going to be a third part, because I could say he works at Aragorn. He is a super podcast maker, and he's together with Sanne Kanes interviewing a CEO right there on the spot. And they only do a very crisp interview. It's only going to take 30 minutes or something, but they're going to record more questions, so the audience can also participate in the conversation. And I expect he is critical. He is very critical to large tech vendors, and he's so where we are maybe on the positive end, he's going to be very critical. So if you are thinking about coming to this event, definitely do. You'll see the whole spectrum. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you said it perfectly. Ranjan is a skeptic. He asks all the right and really sometimes almost painful questions that us techno-optimists don't always like, but I think that's super relevant. So the whole day, it's going to be from 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. The lunch is included. The drinks, network drinks afterwards are included. It's going to be an amazing day. It's called the AI Masterclass for Business Leaders. We have only 200 seats available, and there's 100 tickets on sales now, and we'll up that as demand grows, because we also want to invite our personal network, etc. But if you really want to see where things are headed, and you want to go beyond those boring ChatGPT workshops and talks about marketing is going to be, images can be generated, and come to us, and we'll show you the real future of what's ahead of us.
Absolutely cool. And then to wrap it up, we also have maybe it's the best way to position as a new proposition from the Innovation Network, because we do already workshops which are more geared towards building a roadmap. So how do you start and where do you want to go? But lately we've seen so many people asking about, so what is the ethical side? And quite often in conversations, if you ask somebody, so why have you not moved yet? The answer is, my data is not here, or I don't trust it, or I have some kind of fear to get started because I don't know about the guardrails, what's happening with my data, all these kind of ethical questions and dilemmas. Yep. And a couple of weeks ago, we had Lisanne Buik on this conversation. She's an AI ethics specialist, and we basically have been working on a workshop together. And she has developed what she calls the GRACE method to walk through it. And GRACE stands for, the G stands for the goal. So what is the objective that you want the AI agents to achieve in the first place? The R stands for resonance. So what is the tone of voice that your agent is applying? These agents can take a certain form, right? They can even be a visual human. So what kind of tone of voice? How are the values of your company incorporated? The A stands for agency. So how autonomously do you want those agents to behave? C is the collaboration. How do you work together with your agents? Are they full-blown digital employees within the company or not? And the last one is the embodiment. So is it just a chatbot somewhere, or maybe is there an avatar on it, and how does that person then look? Those are the kind of pillars that we will take during the workshop, an entire team from one organization through, and you will end up at the end with let's say a value statement to use AI agents in an optimal, ethical way. So really looking forward. It's just a brand new proposition where we're kicking it off, and you can sign up for it.
Awesome sauce. Well, that's it.
That's it.
We made it.
We made it. Wrap it up in style, Aragorn.
Yeah, the links are all in the description of the video if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it. Of course, everything will be in our written newsletter, which Nicola Khalil, our amazing assistant, social media manager, and basically biological intelligence is helping us create for you to read. That's it for now. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to buy tickets for the masterclass. That's it for now, and like they say in the Netherlands.
See you later.
See you later.
Bridging the gap of exponential growth. Patrick and Aragorn share the truth. Join our community, let's innovate with InnoVision.